Every year, millions of people walk into sneaker stores or open the Sneakers app and spend around $200 on a pair of Air Jordans. Not resale, retail. And somehow, they still sell out, which raises the interesting question, why? Because if we're being honest, there is no way that this shoe actually costs $200 to make. It's leather, it's rubber, it's foam, it's glue, it's thread, a cardboard box. There isn't $200 worth of material sitting here. So today I wanted to answer a question that I've wondered for years. Where does every dollar actually go? How much does it cost to manufacture an Air Jordan? How much does Nike make? How much does the retailer make? How much goes to Michael Jordan? And why has the price of Jordans climbed from $65 in 1985 to over $200 today? And the answers to those questions have almost nothing to do with leather and everything to do with one of the greatest brands ever built. Let's start with probably the biggest misconception surrounding sneakers. No, an Air Jordan does not cost $200 to manufacture, not even close. In fact, industry estimates generally put the total factory production cost of most Jordan retros somewhere between $30 and $50 per pair, depending on the model. And that's because Nike manufactures at absolutely massive scale. Instead of producing hundreds of pairs, they're producing hundreds of thousands, and sometimes millions. When you're buying leather by the ton, ordering rubber by the shipping container, and using the same factories year after year, everything becomes dramatically cheaper. So what exactly goes into that manufacturing cost? Well, you've got a leather upper, you've got a rubber outsole, a foam midsole, the air unit, thread, glue, laces, a sock liner, the box. And it's not just the materials. You've also got the factory workers assembling everything, quality control, and the factory's own operating expenses. According to sneaker manufacturing breakdowns shared by industry sources, a premium Jordan like an Air Jordan 1 might look something like this. Jordan brand might spend about $35 in materials, $10 in labor, $5 in factory overhead, and then another $25 allocated towards marketing and advertising once Nike begins selling the shoe. Now those numbers aren't exact and they'll vary from model to model. An Air Jordan 4 doesn't cost exactly the same as an Air Jordan 1, an Air Jordan 39 doesn't cost exactly the same as an Air Jordan 3, but the overall picture stays pretty consistent. If you're looking at only the physical product, then no, you're definitely not holding $200 worth of materials. But that doesn't mean that Nike is making $150 every time they sell a pair, because once that shoe comes off the production line, its journey is only beginning. Once the last lace is threaded and the last stitch is inspected and the box is shut, Nike still is not done spending money, not even close. In manufacturing, there's a term called FOB, which stands for free on board. What that basically means is that the factory is responsible for getting the finished shoes onto a cargo ship at the port, but once they're loaded onto that ship, everything becomes Nike's responsibility. The ocean freight costs, the shipping containers, insurance, port fees, import duties, customs, warehouses, and domestic trucking, just to name a few, and that doesn't even include the distribution centers and the inventory systems and the returns. Even storing millions of pairs of shoes costs money. That orange Nike box or that black Jordan box, those aren't free either. According to manufacturing cost breakdowns, once shipping, insurance, custom duties, and freight are added, the landed cost of a sneaker is roughly 20% higher than the original factory cost. So if the factory is charging Nike around $30 to produce the shoe, Nike's already spent closer to $32 to $36 by the time that sneaker actually reaches their warehouses. And depending on the type of footwear, import duties alone can range anywhere from 10 to 20%. Now $32 still sounds incredibly cheap compared to a $200 retail price, but here's the thing, Nike still hasn't sold the shoe. They've only gotten it into the country. The biggest surprise in the entire story is what happens next, because the company making the shoe usually isn't the company selling it to you. Here's the part that surprises almost everyone. When you walk into a Foot Locker and buy a pair of Jordans for $200, Nike usually doesn't receive $200. The retailer does. Most major footwear brands sell their shoes through what's called wholesale. That means that Nike manufactures the shoe and then sells it to Foot Locker or JD Sports or Dick's Sporting Goods or your local sneaker boutique at a discounted wholesale price. Now for premium footwear like Jordans, that wholesale price is typically around 55% of the retail price. So if a pair of Jordans retails for $200, then Nike may only receive around $110. That leaves the retailer with roughly $90. Now before you think, man, these retailers are making a fortune, remember, they're taking on a lot of the risk. They have to pay rent, which is generally thousands of dollars. In some cases, like stores in the center of a city, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. They've got to pay employees, utilities, security, insurance, inventory costs, credit card processing fees, and something that retailers call shrink, which is just a fancy word for saying stolen or missing inventory. On top of that, not every pair sells for full price either. Some eventually get marked down, others end up in outlet stores, some even get sent back to Nike. So while a retailer might have $90 to work with, they're certainly not pocketing $90. Now here's something that's really interesting to think about. One of the biggest reasons that Nike has invested so heavily in Nike.com and the Sneakers app is because they get to skip all of that. If Nike sells a $200 pair of Jordans directly to you, instead of wholesaling it for $110, they keep almost the entire retail price for themselves. That is an additional $90 in revenue on every pair sold, which explains why Nike has spent the last decade pushing harder and harder toward direct-to-consumer sales. But even then, they're still not making as much money as people think. But now let's answer the obvious question. How much profit does Nike actually keep? Because this is where social media gets it completely wrong. You'll constantly hear people say, that shoe cost $30 to make, Nike just made $170. And to be honest with you, it sounds believable, but that's really not how businesses work. Here's an analogy. Think about your own paycheck. If you earn, let's say, $70,000 a year, you don't actually keep $70,000. You still end up paying for housing, food, transportation, insurance, taxes, utilities, savings, and just life. Nike works exactly the same way. So let's get a little bit deeper into the numbers of a typical $200 Air Jordan sneaker. The total production and landed cost, meaning the leather, the rubber, the foam, factory labor, factory overhead, ocean freight, insurance, and import duties, and getting the shoe all the way to Nike's warehouses, that's roughly $32, which to be fair is only possible because they produce so many pairs of sneakers. A lot of other sneaker brands have to pay way more because they're not producing in the quantities that Nike is producing it. Then Nike wholesales that shoe to a retailer for approximately $110. But Nike still doesn't get to keep all of that. Because these shoes are Jordan sneakers, Michael Jordan earns a royalty, and that apparently is around 5% on every Jordan brand product sold. So on a wholesale price of $110, that's roughly $6. So now the math looks like this. Retail price, $200, Nike wholesale revenue, $110, production and shipping, subtract $32, Michael Jordan royalty, subtract $6, leaving Nike with approximately $72 in gross profit. Now, if you made it this far in the video, you are probably thinking, okay, so Nike makes $72 on every pair. Well, not exactly, because gross profit isn't the same thing as net profit. From that $72, Nike still has to pay for research and development, design teams, engineers, corporate employee salaries, marketing, athlete endorsements, office buildings, warehouses, technology, insurance, the sneakers app, administrative costs, legal teams, customer support, and taxes. And by the time all these expenses are paid, Nike's estimated net profit on a $200 pair of Air Jordans is likely somewhere around $10 to $12 per pair. Now let's compare that to a more typical $100 Nike running shoe. Nike will wholesale that shoe for roughly $55. Manufacturing and logistics cost around $30, leaving approximately $25 in gross profits. After paying for all of those same corporate expenses that we just mentioned, Nike's actual net profit shrinks to roughly $5. Now if that sounds unbelievably low, take a look at Nike's actual financial statements. This is all public information from their fiscal year ending in May of 2025. Nike as a brand generated approximately $46.3 billion in revenue. After paying for manufacturing, marketing, corporate expenses, research and development, taxes, and everything else, Nike finished the year with about $3.2 billion in net income. That's a net profit margin of just under 7%. And while yes, we are talking about in the billions here, which is a huge amount of money, but that profit margin is really low. So despite what social media would have you believe, Nike isn't turning a $30 shoe into $200 worth of profit. They're running one of the largest apparel companies on the planet, and that costs an incredible amount of money. But if Nike only makes around $10, why are people still willing to spend $200? Well, that's because the most valuable part of an Air Jordan sneaker is not actually the shoe. Think about this. Leather isn't rare. Rubber isn't rare. Foam isn't rare. There are dozens of companies that can manufacture a sneaker, but almost nobody can manufacture culture. Back in 1984, Nike was not the biggest basketball company in the world. In fact, Michael Jordan reportedly wanted to sign with Adidas. Nike took a chance. Instead of giving him just another endorsement deal, they built an entire brand around him. Then came the Air Jordan, the band commercials, then the championships, the iconic dunks, the game winners, the last shot, every sold out launch, every resale flip, and every YouTube review, even this one. All of those things have added an almost immeasurable value to that Jumpman logo. So if Nike only makes around $10 on a $200 Jordan, why spend billions of dollars every year on marketing? Because marketing isn't just something that Nike does. Marketing is the product. Think about it. Why do people line up outside of stores for Jordans? It's not because these shoes have better leather than other sneakers on the market. It's because of the story. For the fiscal year ending in May of 2025, Nike spent approximately $4.69 billion on what they call demand creation expense. That's Nike's term for marketing, which includes advertising, athlete endorsements, brand campaigns, product launches, events, social media, commercials, everything that keeps Nike at the center of sneaker culture. Think about that, almost $5 billion every single year. Now, let's be honest here. It is easy to look at that number and think that's ridiculous. But here's the thing, without marketing, would Jordans still be Jordans? Would a Jordan 4 still command a $220 retail price if Michael Jordan never won 6 championships? If Travis Scott never wore them? If every generation didn't grow up seeing them on their favorite athletes, musicians, and celebrities? Probably not, because Nike isn't just selling sneakers. They're selling aspiration, identity, status, history, and emotion. That feeling that you get when you open up a new box of Jordans. That's what almost $5 billion a year buys. But now let's talk about those constant price increases that Jordans get every year. When the original Air Jordan 1 released in 1985, it retailed for $65. And at the time, people thought that was expensive. Now adjusted for inflation, that $65 is worth roughly $190 today. So right away, a modern $200 Jordan doesn't look nearly as outrageous as it first seems. But inflation is only part of the story. Over the last 40 years, labor costs have increased, shipping costs have increased, materials have become more expensive, marketing budgets have exploded, research and development has expanded, technology has improved, factories have become more sophisticated, and consumer expectations have changed. But honestly, none of those are the biggest reason why Jordans cost $200 and more today. The biggest reason is simple. People just keep buying them. Pricing isn't just based solely on cost, it's based on perceived value. If Nike released a Jordan at $120, would they sell more pairs? Probably. But would they make more money? Maybe not, because lowering the price can also lower the perception of exclusivity. Jordan brand is spent 40 years positioning itself as a premium product, not just another basketball shoe, a cultural icon. And when millions of people continue to pay $200 plus, there's very little incentive to charge less. And that's why almost every major Jordan release today launches above $200, because the market has proven people believe they're worth it. Are they actually worth it? Well, it's up to you. But after digging through manufacturing reports, financial statements, and industry breakdowns, and trying to trace where every dollar actually goes, I came away with one conclusion. Jordans aren't expensive because they cost $200 to make. They're expensive because everything surrounding the shoe costs money. The materials, the factories, the shipping, the designers, the engineers, the marketers, the athletes, Michael Jordan himself. Could they sell Jordans for less? Absolutely. Would they still make money? Of course. But unfortunately, that's not how pricing works. The retail price of a product isn't determined by what it costs to make, it's determined by what people believe that it's worth. And for the past 4 decades, Jordan Brand has convinced millions of people, myself included, that a pair of sneakers can represent something much bigger than leather and rubber. They're a piece of basketball history, a piece of fashion history, a collectible, a memory even. Whether you think these shoes are actually worth $200, that is completely up to you. But hopefully now, the next time that you see that price tag, you'll know exactly where your money is actually going. But hey, if you guys enjoyed this deep dive and want to see more videos breaking down the sneaker industry like this, sneaker history, and maybe even the business behind some of the world's biggest brands, make sure to let me know in the comment section down below and hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.